Well, this week was about the Christmas Eve service. We had a little over 170 folks show up. I'd call it a very successful event. We talked about the light, of course, because it's a candle lighting service, the returning of the light. I've been thinking a lot about the returning of the light and how our universe, how our solar system and universe all work in such a spiritual manner, in such a mystical way, and yet we walk around as if, it's just like mundane stuff. We walk around as if we're not Stardust. We walk around as if we're not mystical. We walk around like it's just everyday stuff going on. And maybe we take a moment to take in the mystical, but how often do you take a moment to remember that you are mystical? That we are this mystical being, and that just because our ego mind and our emotions are showing us a world that seems very solid and intact, that doesn't mean that's so. Just even if it's your experience that most of us have most of the time is coming out of an ego presence that all it wants is safety and will do anything to keep you safe. Even stop you from seeing the magical around you if it feels like it's moving the sand underneath your feet. You know what I'm saying? And so we've got this situation, we've got this way of being in the world that has us dealing with one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, that doesn't really allow for the true nature of reality, the true nature of it, which is the mystical nature of it, to penetrate most of the time. That's why you guys show up here, because you want to be penetrated. You want to feel that sense of mystical in your lives. Am I wrong? Otherwise you could be at a social club. Right? We come here, we take the classes, we practice, but we show up on Sundays to remind ourselves of the mystical nature of our lives, not just life, but us. That's why I went to sweat lodges, to sacred ceremony. Being in that, and that's what our candle lighting was about, creating sacred ceremony. There were lots of folks there who were saying, this feels magical. Maybe you were there. Maybe it felt that way to you. It just, there's something spiritual, there's something magical going on here. There's something deep about all this. And it's built into life itself. There was this physicist named Fred Hoyle who was looking into carbon because he wanted to know the nature of how carbon, which is the basis of life, right? We exist because of carbon. It starts with carbon. So he wanted to know, how did carbon come about? And he was an atheist. He was a complete atheist, was just positive that science was the answer. And he got into this and realized in his mathematics and his theoretical study that it is impossible to create enough carbon for life to exist randomly. That from a random basis of numbers, there wouldn't be enough carbon to create life, which means there has to be something directing it to be created. And he got so deep into this that he figured out the exact, or really close, theoretically, he figured out that to create carbon takes 5,700 degrees centigrade. When they actually were able to measure it, it turned out the measurement that he came up with in the 1920s was 5,700? Came up to 57.14. He was that close with his measurements when they were able to measure, with his mathematics, which is theory, when they actually measured it. He said, this is not random. There's something here. And all of a sudden, here's this physicist who his entire life has been an atheist, believing in the hand of God, he called it. Something intelligent here who's putting this forth. And so when we walk around thinking that things are just random, we're losing touch with our natural beingness. We are stardust. You know, the earth was created out of a star. The star was created out of a galaxy. Galaxy was created out of the universe. We come out of the earth. So this is spirituality built into the thing, built into us. We don't have to go looking for it. We don't have to seek it out there. It's actually in our bones, the stardust itself. We are that, right? But how does that apply to everyday life when you're going around? Well, for me, it applies when I remember that it's something that I used to need to drop acid for, or, you know, do peyote ceremonies or whatever. I realized that wasn't getting me there because the acid wore off. The peyote wore off. And then I was right back where I started. So how do I, what? I missed that. Only if it wasn't clean. But the idea of practice, of the practice of remembering that it must be here in this moment. Whatever this moment is, it must be here. It must be here now for us, right? Right? In whatever's going on. When I was a stockbroker, right? I'm sitting in this room. The room was maybe 4 times the size of this room. And there were no dividers, just desks, huge amount of desks, and people sitting behind the desks. And all they're doing is calling people to say, you need to invest in stocks, you need to invest in stocks, you need to invest in stocks. Give me your money, give me your money, give me your money, you know. And in the sense, and then the amount of people who got sick, including myself, out of working there, you know, I think that disease, the heart of disease, is the separation that we feel that doesn't actually exist because we're stardust. But we start to feel that separation from who we actually are. And the further we get away from the actuality of who we are, the more diseased we get. You know, we're in dis-ease. It's untenable to walk through life so separated from the reality of who you are. I've spent a lot of time in this life asking myself that question. Who am I? Who am I really? Who am I? And it's clear to me that I'm stardust. It's clear to me that the basic essence of who I am is spirit itself. And that the entire universe is here to support that. And giving us this lesson all the time, so we get to the returning of the light. This point at which the light starts coming back. And we all know the physics of it, right? The physics of it being we're circling the earth, and it's an oval circle. It's not really a circle. We oval the earth. And when we get further away, you know, and the tilt and all that, there's all this science and math behind it. 100,000 years ago, they didn't have that science and math. Yet they still celebrated the exact same thing. They just had different reasons for it. So we have better reasons, and yet we still celebrate it. Why? Why are we drawn to celebrate the returning of the light? What is it that makes us want to do that besides the fact that, people say, well, because it was dark and we want more light. Well, why? What about the dark scares us? What about it, puts us off? What's going actually on there inside each of us that draws us to wanting to celebrate this thing? It's spirit. It's our return to ourselves. It's not a return to the light. Okay, there's a return to the light. I'm not saying there isn't. But I'm just saying, given we understand the math of it, the physics of it, there's something deeper going on here inside us that wants us to remember who we really are, and we get to celebrate that because celebrations and sacred ceremony help us remember who we are. People who sit in class with other people, especially when my wife is teaching it, or Tammy, or, it creates sacred space between the people in there, and they get to remember together. They get to remember together because when we come together in a group, sometimes it's way easier to remember than when we're flying out there solo. Not that we're ever truly flying out there solo, but it can feel that way sometimes, right? That's why we come together, to remind ourselves of this power and presence that's not happening out there, but actually who we are. Dr. Stephen Hawking wrote this book called The Theory of Everything, back when I was in my early 30s. And I read that book, and you read the whole book, and then the only thing that stuck with me in that book was one of the very last lines. And one of the very last lines of the book is, the reason we exist is so the universe can appreciate itself. The universe grew and grew. It started with just being all this dust, turned itself into galaxies, turned itself into stars, turned itself into planets, turned itself into beings on the planets, and finally got to conscious beings like us, just so it could get to a place of appreciating itself. And when I read that, I just was blown away by that concept, by the idea that we're here to appreciate us, which is the universe. Each one of you is the universe. I have this mantra for myself. When I don't get a good night's sleep, or I'm just tired and overworked, and I hear myself saying something to me like, boy, I'm tired. Then I'll go, wait a minute. Here's what's true. I have the power of the universe in every cell of my body. That has gotten me through more days of no sleep than anything else could have. And how we celebrate this incredible oneness, this incredibleness of who we actually are, came to me in a peyote ceremony when I was in my early 20s. I was sitting there, we were sitting around in a teepee, we're drumming, we're eating peyote, and all of a sudden I hear this voice that comes to me. It says, I'm going to tell you the history of the church. And I was like, okay. This is what it said. It said, in the beginning, have I ever told you guys this before? All right, here's the history of the church. I couldn't remember whether I'd shared this before or not. The voice said, in the beginning, people went outside their caves to pray to the all that they saw in the sky. They took it in and knew that there was something greater than themselves, going on all the time, and they could see it right above them. And so they're outside praying to this. And then one day they go, being on our knees and standing all the time is a little uncomfortable. Why don't we roll over some logs so we got something to sit down on? But to do that, they had to create a sacred space. Instead of it knowing that it was all sacred, they had to create a sacred space. So they did. They created a sacred space. They said, this is now, the shamans would say, this is now the sacred space. We're going to put the logs here, so when we sit here around the fire, this is where we're praying. This is where the sacred space is. And so they did that for a while, and then they thought, we get these heavy winds. They come in, they blow the smoke all over the place. Why don't we put up some walls or something to kind of help us with keeping the smoke so it just rises up instead of going all over the place. So they put up some walls, and then somebody says, even with the walls, the rain keeps getting in. What we need here is a ceiling. And so they put on a ceiling. And so once they had the ceiling, then some other tribe said, wow, they got that structure over there and it looks kind of cool. We should build one just like it, except we'll make ours even bigger and better. And then the other people said, oh, wait, I'm going to build mine bigger and better, and so I'm going to have the biggest cathedral going. And then they built over here, and they built bigger, and they kept getting bigger and bigger and fancier, and everybody forgot that originally they went outside to pray. And I was like, whoa! I was on peyote after all, so I was like, whoa! But that's the thing about it, right? We forget all the time. And a lot of the time, why we're forgetting is we're not out in the elements. We're not outside where the actual awe is, where it's going on. Not that it's not inside too. We get to bring it everywhere we want. But it's easier to forget when the sky above isn't above you, when the largeness of life itself is not surrounding you because you've closed yourself off in whatever ways we close ourselves off. And we all do it, right? Because life gets overwhelming. And so we kind of close it and make it smaller and make it easier to deal with because that's easier. But in doing so, we make ourselves smaller. Not really, but in how it feels. I mean, in actuality, we can't make ourselves smaller. We are stardust. That's just who we are. So we can't make ourselves smaller, yet we try. We try all the time so that we can cope. Because if it gets too large, it gets too overwhelming. Or am I the only one who's felt overwhelm in life? This is how it goes. So what do you do with that? What do you do with that? You remember. As often as you can, the practice is in the remembering. The practice is in the truth that roots all the way down, no matter what. We have a great thing like Christmas Eve, the returning of the light, to remind us. It's just a reminder event. That's all it is, a reminder event that we get to have, that we've created throughout the year, as many as we can. And then really what you need to do is be bringing it in as much during the day as you can. Every day, bring it in. Who am I really? Who am I really? Whatever the circumstance, you are stardust. Whatever the circumstance, and you have the power of the universe in every cell of your body. That's the truth of it. That's the truth that we forget time and time. I forget time after time after time, right? And so the reminders, the practice of it, that's the beauty of classes. Then you're sitting around with a whole bunch of other people going, oh, yeah. I'm more powerful than I realize. Thank you for reminding me. The beauty of community is that we're not alone. I have people I call to remind me if I forget. If I forget how powerful I am, it's nice to have somebody that says, you have the power of the universe in every bone in your body. Oh, yeah, I do, right. Oh, that's good. Thank you for reminding me. Do you have somebody who can remind you of that? You do. Look around you. Look around. Anybody here would do that for you. Just ask, right? So that you have somebody to remind you when you forget, when you're playing small, when you're thinking, life feels so overwhelming. How could it be overwhelming if you are the universe itself? But your ego mind doesn't like that because it's not safe. Your ego mind that is triggering all those emotions that make you feel overwhelmed, that make you feel like life is, can't be this large. I need to play in this realm because this is what I can deal with right now. Right? And we have those moments. And I get that we're going to have those moments. Our ego mind isn't going away, and it's not our job to kill it. It's just a little child. You don't kill children. You train them. Well, I mean, I don't know. Zeus ate his kids, so what do I know? Yeah, that's right. The opportunities that arise. For anybody who didn't hear that, said maybe your kids train you. Well, that's what Gil Gibran said. He said, we're the bow, but we can never be the arrow. We can't ever go where our kids are going. So that's right. But for ourselves, how we want to be in this life starts with remembering who you are. When you feel small, when life feels overwhelming, it's a really good time to remember the truth. Now, remembering the truth doesn't always shift you, but it's a start. And I will tell you this, if you don't remember the truth, what chance do you have of shifting? Your chances grow dramatically when at least you remember the truth. Whether you can hold on to that truth. I used to, when I was in that cabin in the woods, I'd call that truth life rafts. And I would cling to them for dear life when I felt like I was sinking. Whenever I felt like I was sinking, I would take an absolute truth like my life works. Time is on my side. I am loved. Or whatever yours is, right? You want to find these truths that root all the way down. They're absolute. They don't change. Whatever the situation is you are you are Stardust. You are a powerful, creative, spiritual being. This is true no matter what the situation looks like. Grabbing onto a truth like that, holding on to a truth like that, in the midst of whatever circumstance feels so overwhelming, is bringing up your anxiety, is bringing up your frustration, is bringing up whatever feelings might be arising, hopelessness, right? What is hopeless about the universe? And yet we feel hopelessness. Time for truth. Time to grab onto a life raft and cling to it for dear life. I have. It's made all the difference in my world, is my ability to cling in the midst of the most horrendous situations to what the truth is, and then allow it to draw me towards it. Sometimes I'm just clinging, right? I'm not actually taking action towards the truth. I'm just clinging to it and allowing it to pull me. Let the truth pull you, because it will. It has for me every single time. It is non-failing. The universe is constantly expanding. It's not going to stop expanding because your ego mind wants you to play smaller. Your ego emotions are frustrated. The universe is still expanding, which means you can grasp onto that, since that's who you are, so that you can expand. You can expand in any situation by clinging to the truth. Are you with me on this? This is what's possible for each and every one of us, no matter what the circumstance. It's been the biggest power in my life, clinging to the truth that we are this universe. In every bone of our body, you are mystical creatures that just needs to walk outside and look around and know that this is who you are. It's not like looking up at the stars and going, oh my God, they're so big. It's like, oh my God, I am this big. Right? That's the beauty of walking outside is, oh my God, I am this. What am I worried about? The next time you feel any worry, think about that. You walk outside and take a look at it all. And remember, that's who you are. That's not just what you're a part of. You are this stardust. You are this power. And the more you can bring that sacred into each moment of your life, the more you get to experience that instead of, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, frustrated, hopeless. Let's get beyond that. That's why we're here. That's what we're doing. And that's what I know for each and every one of you. Thank you. I love you.